at the School of Fashion and Arts in Makati, and she is a freelance trainer and policy consultant. Currently, so at the moment, she is a senior global HR manager overseeing a team of HR professionals in over 13 countries in Asia Pacific region. So what is this team about? The team works on the design and implementation of global HR policies, projects, strategies, and initiatives that impact the employee, the organization, and the community. So our speaker today is quite loaded, no? And we would really do her honor if we're going to focus this afternoon, no? Focus our attention so that we could really gain and maximize this afternoon and create value for yourselves. Okay, so Miss Janet is back. Thank you very much, Miss Janet. Thank you for internet connection that works.
Thank you. Technology, when you need it, it's really like this all the time. All right. So
Yes.
sorry for the cut earlier, Miss Jeline. This afternoon, we will be discussing. Actually, this is has a connection. In our past two webinars on March, I think if I'm not mistaken, March 8, we had Sir Darwin Rivers for Labor 101. And
Yes.
then on the following week, we had Miss Daisy Calyanto who discussed with us on how we could apply actually the labor advisories in the new normals. And what's exciting, summing up the previous two discussion we have today, Miss Kristine, who will be discussing how timely is it at this moment now to really discuss about going through all the previous policies that we've been used to implementing, and we have to not really redo but revisit and see the applicability, or if there's like a need to do some revisions, right, Miss Jeline?
Yes, definitely. No, at this point, we do need to know how certain policies can be applied in the new normal because there are certain, this pandemic has a not really, well, for lack of a better term, forced, no, forced upon us certain changes. And so this afternoon, our speaker, Miss Christine, is going to go through some basics, no, basics review and analysis of some policies. But in this afternoon, it will be in the context of the new normal. Also, just to note that, just to level expectations, the policy review, the basic policies and the analysis of policies are done in the corporate setting. So we're not going to talk about anything in the public setting. So
Public setting.
it's only in the corporate setting. So let us level that expectation, no, for our participants. So for the ones that are here, thank you very much for joining us. And I think at this point in time, Miss Janet, are we ready to um, to introduce our speaker? Just like what I mentioned kanina, the only word that came up to mind is she's loaded. No, so we're very
Loaded.
to have her as a speaker.
She's really an expert in this field, have done several like policy reviews in the past. So without further ado, maybe call on Miss Kristine Dela Cruz to join us this afternoon.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you so much sa napakagandang introduction. Very overwhelming. Napaisip ako ba talaga yun. But thank you so much for being so kind, for giving me this opportunity to be able to share a bit of our knowledge, a bit of our experience to our our colleagues, our Filipino colleagues, HR colleagues here in the Philippines. So yeah, hopefully na-level natin yung expectations natin for this discussion. And then let me just share my screen now if we are starting. Okay, so for this afternoon, our topic is policy review and analysis in the new normal. Again, my name is Kristine Dela Cruz. So thank you again, everyone, for allotting an hour or more of your day today. I know you should be resting, but again, nag-join kayo, no? But it's another knowledge. So I will try my best to be able to be worthy dun sa inyong hour for today. So yeah. policy review and analysis. Before we go deep dive, no, na-introduce naman na ako kanina, but as part of my usual um, presentation, no, I normally introduce myself. I'm a graduate of BS Psychology from the Far Eastern University. I did have my Master's of Industrial Relations from the School of Labor and Industrial Relations in UP Diliman. I used to be a general psychology lecturer and a freelance trainer. So I did have my progressive experience in HR, of which the part of my sharing today came from. And currently, I am VP of Policy and Membership for the ASEAN HR Leaders Circle. So for those of you who haven't visited yet our page, I hope that's just okay. ASEAN HR Leaders Circle, it's also HR membership that advocates learning. All right. So before we start, may pakonting survey lang ako, and I hope Miss Rose, you guys and the rest of the hosts, you guys can help me collect ano ba yung pinaka mataas na response ng ating mga participants. This is just going to be very quick, and it's just an engagement for me to get to know who's here with me at this afternoon. So first, why did you attend this learning session? Is it because you're interested of the topic, or you basically know the host and myself, or you have time, or is it all of the above? We can like count 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. It's an overwhelming answers of all of the above and interested in the topic. So that's basically the picture of the answers, A and
Wow.
D.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And then I do have a few more questions. Now, do you think we need to update some of our HR policies given the global situation that we are experiencing? The choices are there. Is it a no? Is it I don't know? Is it a yes, or is it a maybe? 8, 7, 6, 5, 2, 1.
There's a lot of yes and mangilan-ngilan, mga 2 or 3 so far that I've seen maybe, but there's really a lot of the yes.
All right. Okay.
Even in Facebook, all everyone are saying yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's good. At least we are all on the same page. And then dun sa mga may I don't know or no or maybe, well, probably we can influence those answers as we go on with the discussion. And then next, how many policies have you updated? If you said yes, we need to update. Have you updated your policies, and how many are those from last year to this year? Is it 5 and above? Well, wala pa. Isa pa lang. Or is it less than 5? 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Okay, so there's a lot of the A, but
Wow.
there's a lot of the A, but there is an equal next, no, not next na, an equal of D and B.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, 5 and above, knowing that our participants or some of our participants have updated their policies 5 and above, that's really interesting because it only speaks of how proactive you are as HR in terms of keeping your policies updated. And yes, and for those who answered less than 5, it's not bad. You know, policies have to be visited or reviewed depending on certain circumstances. So we'll get to know about that as we go along. And then, all right, last 2 questions for this survey. Why is there a need to update our policies? Is it because it's stated already in the policy that it has to be updated? Or policy is no longer being followed? Or there's new issues that arise? Or wala lang kasi I want to. Dami kami time sa HR eh. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Definitely, there's new issues have arisen. So there's a lot of C. There's quite a few, just a few of the B.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of the C. And then may humahabol na 1 or 2, a bit of the A. There's a
All
lot of
right.
C and B.
Good thing there's none who answered letter D.
How honest,
So,
no?
bakit
How
po
honest.
ba?
Because I want to. Yeah.
Because I want to, no? Pwede rin naman eh, kasi hindi applicable yung policy, parang ayoko. But anyway, thank you so much. I think that's really good. It's really good to know that people are really aware of the things that they need to do, or HR are really aware of why they have to, revisit policy due to these issues, and that there are also reasons why policy is no longer being followed, I guess. So that's one part of the discussion that we are going to have this afternoon. And lastly, which of the following should be considered as a policy review step? If you're going to choose what's the most important, is it approval? Is it consultation? Is it needs analysis? Do we need to have needs analysis in policy review? 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Wow, this is interesting because there's a lot of the D. The second contender is a C.
C.
Actually, merong, how do you call that? The dark horse. There's an F. I don't know where that came from. There's an F.
Baka na wrong pindot siya.
Yeah, the wrong pindot siguro. And there's a bit of A. Meron ding A. But there's really more of the D.
Na typo error ata.
Typo error. Kasi on my keyboard, D comes next. F comes next sa D. Na?
Yeah.
Hopefully D yun. So we would like to assume that's na D yun. Yes, definitely, no. We would like to also learn ano ba talaga yung mga importanteng steps in terms of reviewing our policy. So more not so much of the questions anymore. Thank you so much for being very cooperative. Now I get to know, no, na yung ating audience is of the same level of what I actually would like to have, no, to see the people really being proactive in terms of updating their policies, not only because it's part of their job, but it's because it's part of what you can support the company and your colleagues in your organizations as well. So, right. So expectation setting, our focus discussion, as said earlier, company policies, basics, reviews, analyses, and its applicability in the new normal. So my objectives, hopefully at the end of our session, you will gain an insight about policy review analysis and how to use it or when to use it as needed in the new normal. So outlining basics of policy, we'll have some definition, types of policies, policy review, reason for a policy review, steps to conduct a policy review, and the new normal. On the third piece, that's a bit of general. So what is the impact of this new normal to our policies and to everything that we are experiencing in HR right now? So HR kasi ngayon is in the driver's seat kahit papano, no? We are considered in the driver's seat because basically sa atin nanggagaling yung mga business continuity plans or policies that would support the business continuity plans, and tayo ngayon yung naging go-to ng mga employees whenever they do have questions. And at some point, no, we also have to be very prepared on how we do this. So is it only because of the changes kung kailan natin i-update yung policy? We'll get to know more about that. So sharing this quote with you guys, when policies and procedures are not documented, or when they are inaccessible or incomprehensible or difficult to use, the consequences for organizations can be very serious. This compels, no, yung safety and security. Nako-compromise siya when it's not communicated very clearly. So I will leave that to you guys to comprehend. So we'll go into the basics of policy, definitions and types. So what is a policy? Now I've gathered some definition of the policy. This came from the CDC. Definition of the policy, it's a law, sabi, no? A regulation, procedure, administrative action of governments and other institutions. That's just one. I did have other policy definition. This one came from Cambridge Dictionary, a set of ideas. It said, a policy is a set of idea, a plan of what to do in a particular situation. And it is something that has to be officially agreed, by a group of people in the business. We also have Merriam-Webster saying that it's a prudence in the wisdom of management, a definite course or method of action selected from among alternatives in light of given conditions to guide and determine present and future decisions. So nakikita ninyo yung consistency. Yung consistency dun sa definition ng policies, ano-ano ba ito? So, eto siya. Rules, policy are rules, that govern, ibig sabihin, nakakasakop. It has specific principles pertaining to, the general guidance for how to approach as adopted by the organization that will affect its employees concerning various aspects of employment and definitely on how they do their business. So again, a company policy should be presented in a written document guideline and communicated and made known to employees. And we identified characteristics of the policies. States policies should state specific principles, and it's focused on actions. So iba yung announcement, and then iba din yung policy. When you say you have a policy on this, there should be a determinable or determined actions from that policy. Say, for example, you had a policy, I am one of the employee. My first question to you is that, what's that policy has to do with me as an employee of this company? So definitely your policy should be focused on an action. And lastly, it is a statement of authority by a person or the organization itself on how they want to be made known, in principle, in vision, and in mission by the employees as well as in the community. So human resources policies, a little bit of highlighting lang din, given that this is an HR learning session. Human resource policies, these are codified decisions established by the organization as well. And normally this encompasses all of the areas of HR, from the performance management to recruitment, training and development, compensation, and resource planning. So those are all part of the human resource policies. We have different types of policies. As we go along the slides, these are different types of policies and its purpose. So there are policies that are being made to address certain issues. Meron tayo mga tinatawag na financial and economic policy. Normally, you would learn more about this doon sa mga bigger companies, bigger industries. Some companies also have environmental policy. We did launch our environmental policy 2 years ago. So it's about sustainability as well. Industrial policy, energy, security and defense, education and health. Pang-aaring ito, yung iba dito applicable sa inyo, yung iba hindi. But these are just outlining, the type of policy that are being created to address issues. Now, there are also policies that are being developed, because of certain scope or developer. So, kunwari, private and public. So, sa atin, kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, itong ating session ngayon is for corporate policies. So, private relating to institutions, organizations. So, yung mga corporations na meron tayo. Public policy, alam na natin yan. That's basically institutionalized by the government, iba't ibang body. Yung mga sinusunod natin na guideline from Department of Labor and Employment, kasama na dito. So, again, scope covered or developer, isang type din yan ng policy. It's either a public policy or a private policy. There are also policies according to their effects on individuals. Meron tayong tinatawag na distributive, regulatory, and constituent policy. One example, regulatory policies, in the government, we have policy regulations on pricing, right? So DTI sets the prices for some of the commodities, and that particular policy is called regulatory policy. So as the term connotes, as the title connotes, or as the type connotes, it is basically what their policy is. And then reasons for development, eto, medyo lumalapit na tayo dun sa realidad natin sa ating corporation. According to reasons for development, number one, reactive policy. Sabi nga dito, it's a response to a problem or emergency. It's definitely designed to remedy the existing problem. So pag sinabi nating reactive, may action, tapos saka tayo gawa ng policy kasi meron tayong nakita. Now, this is the opposite of the other one, which is the proactive policy. So it's designed to prevent a concern, problem, or emergency from occurring. So kailan ba nangyayari ito? For me, from my experience, normally, we create proactive policy when we have new programs. No? So for example, we have employee referral program. So in that particular program, you create the guidelines. So pwede kang mag-refer ng empleyado, ng aplikante, pero dapat yung aplikante hindi reporting sa'yo, ganyan. So kumbaga, you don't have any influence in terms of the acceptance of this candidate. Yun lahat yun nandoon sa guidelines. But we have to think one step ahead or a step ahead. Paano tayo magiging proactive dun sa program na yon? Ano ba yung mga concerns na pwedeng mag-emerge doon that would put the employee and the company in jeopardy, no? So halimbawa, o sige, i-refer kita pero babayaran mo ko. You cannot definitely state that doon sa guidelines, diba? Kasi you want to encourage employees to still refer candidates. But again, as a behavior, you would like to control na wag naman sanang gawing kumikitang kabuhayan. Diba? Yung employee referral program mo, ginawang kumikitang kabuhayan, parang nagtayo na siya ng sarili niyang agency na, sige, tutulungan ko kayo makahanap ng trabaho dun sa kumpanya namin. So, nakakakuha na siya ng payment from dun sa nire-refer niya, tapos binabayaran pa siya ng employer niya as a bonus. So, yun yung mga tinitignan natin na pangbalanse for the program, for the benefit not to be abused. Yun yung pagiging proactive, right? And then according to reasons of development, so we have what we call functional policies and centralized policies. So ito naman yung pagkakaiba. Halimbawa, may mga policy na applicable lang siya sa mga plant personnels. Yung mga nasa planta, dapat naka-safety gear sila when they go there. So that's one of the functional policies. Kasi it is required for them to be able to do their job. Functional policies yon. Centralized policies naman, normally, ito pangkalahatan. So kung halimbawa, meron kayong centralized office, meron kayong global office, yung global policy na yun, siya yung nag-a-umbrella dun sa policy na ini-implement niyo on a local scale or on a per branch. So kung ganun yung setup ng inyong corporation. All right. So ngayon new normal. Is it time to review your policies? Yan naman talaga yung gusto nating malaman ngayon. I would definitely say yes. It's a definite yes to review your policies. Why? Your policies should not be static. Dapat ang policies natin dynamic. Kasi we relate to people, we relate to the business, and hindi naman static yung tao, hindi rin naman static yung people, and especially our environment as of the moment. So our policies should be dynamic. Dynamic meaning dapat kaya nitong mag-adapt sa kung ano yung changes na na-experience natin sa working environment, yung mga changes na encounter ng ating business itself. So yes, it is time to review our policies. So some of the reasons for reviewing our policies, as one of the questions kanina, sabi natin, policy is no longer being followed. That is one of the choices. But it's also one of the reasons why policy should be reviewed. Paano natin nalalaman na hindi na napafollow yung policy natin? Dapat meron tayong log of policy violation. Halimbawa, you had enacted a policy dun sa workplace na bawal kumain sa workstation, no? For the reason na baka mabasa kasi yung desk, yung computer masira, and then maging accountable pa si employee. So to minimize that risk or to practically zero out that risk na masira yung equipment, you'd rather prevent the employees from eating in their own stations. Ngayon, as we move on dun sa ating mga bagong challenges sa work, bagong changes, yung adapting natin to the new normal. Ngayon, hindi na sila pwedeng kumain altogether. Maliit lang yung pantry nyo. So, ano ngayon yung gagawin ng mga tao? For them to continue to work, gagawin nila, doon na lang sila sa workstation nila kakain. So, policy is no longer being followed. Bakit? Is it a complete violation, or baka naman it's a workaround na ginagawa ng mga tao? So yun yung kailangan natin tignan. But then again, when policy is no longer being followed, that is one trigger for you, for as policy custodian, na i-revisit na ito and try to see ano yung nagiging reason. Secondly, policy is no longer effective or not having the desired impact. So tayo kasi normally nagsiset pa tayo, may mga company, may mga HRs pa din talaga, no, at saka companies na nagsiset nung defined log in and log out, no, timekeeping, sa pagdating sa timekeeping. Ngayon, nag-instill ka nag-enact ka ng policy sa company mo na people are not allowed to be late for more than how many instances in a month. For example, maximum of 2 instances na pwede ka malate in a month. Pag lumampas ka ng 3, memo ka. Pag lumampas ka ng 5, ganito ka. Pag lumampas ka ng 6, ganito ka. But then again, you realize that even if you have that policy, ang laki pa din ng deduction ng tardiness sa payroll, no? Kasi kabit-kabit yan. So makikita mo yan sa payroll na bakit ganun? Parang ang liit ngayon ata ng sweldo. Yun pala kasi ang daming nabawasan na deduction sa mga kanilang tardiness. So kahit may policy ka na bawal sila malate ng consistent, pero nagkakaroon pa din ng instances na nalilate sila, hindi na na-elicit ng policy yung desired behavior. That is one thing na kailangan mo tignan. Ano ba yung nagiging problema? Kasi sarado nga pala ngayon yung sa ganitong part ng EDSA. And commonly yung mga employees namin dito nakatira, they will have to pass by this area. Kaya pala madaming nalilate. So ano yung pwede kong gawin para ma-elicit ko pa din yung behavior na to? Meron ba kaming na hindi ko binabago yung policy? You know, analysis like that should happen. Pero dapat you have your data to back up what you are thinking. Okay? Next one is new issues have risen that mandate the policy to be amended. Ito yung sinasabi natin, no? This one really called us to be in action, especially now that we are experiencing the global pandemic. We are all not prepared when it struck last year. So yun ay isa sa mga bagong issues. Pwedeng may mga company na nakapag-enact na or nakapag-publish na ng policy ng telecommuting sa kanila, but more commonly than not, kasi hindi naman lahat ng roles sa kumpanya nagagawa from home, no? So paano naman natin i-deal with yun? So tayo mga HRs, we move very quickly for us to be able to address that issue, and that's why some of us or most of us had already updated our policy or have created a new one for the employees, telecommuting, work from home, remote work, kung ano man yung tawag nyo doon. So one thing is for sure, it's to enable the employees to continue working and to provide sustainability of productivity for your company. So, and lastly, changes to the mother policy that makes the existing policy redundant or non-compliant anymore. So, halimbawa dyan, no, meron tayong mga pa-dress code policy, no? Nung una, kailangan color-coded, pagka Monday, naka-white ka, Tuesday, naka-blue ka. Yung mga ganong policy, tapos recently you were thinking about how to encourage, no, yung mga younger employees nyo to be at work, kasi minsan sa iba ayaw nila no nagkakaroon ng color coding na magkakatest tayo ng kulay. So the younger generations, hindi ko naman nila lahat, but some of them would like to express their creativity in how they want to dress up. So nagiging applicable pa ba? Hindi na. So ngayon si mother policy mo, you allowed everybody to dress up to go to the company without following the color coding and just be there presentable. Then probably it's also time to address that dress code policy na hindi na siya applicable. So those are just 4 of the reasons. Madami pang trigger, but these are the most observable, no, easily observable reasons why we need to revisit our policy and do some analysis, review it, and update it when needed. All right, so there's a few steps. So here's a few steps that I would advise everyone in terms of conducting a policy review, or rather a corporate policy review. So definitely before you start, it's important that you find out who is the owner of the policy. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng policy owned ni HR no? So meron tayong mga policy na si IT naman ang may own. Halimbawa, yung mga tools natin. So nag-adapt tayo ng policy, work from home. Iuwi nyo yung mga computer ninyo. Siyempre, ang kaakibat na policy niyan, ang kaduktong na policy niyan is yung policy ni IT. No, pagdating sa security, kailangan nyo ba ng virtual private network to be able to connect dun sa inyong mga system. So those policies should be updated. And then it's important that you know who is the policy owner. Kasi sila din naman yung responsible in terms of conducting a comprehensive review sa mga policy na ito. So again, some of the triggers, no, yung iba nakaset na, may mga policy na due to be reviewed after 2 years, due to be reviewed after 6 months, no? So review date, policy gaps, legislative change, ito yung mga guidelines, no? Tayo sa HR, sinusunod natin guidelines ng Department of Labor of Employment or guidelines ng OSH, no? So, yung mga ganong klase, we follow that. And then, lastly is definitely accumulation of critical mass issues dun sa inyong policy log. I'm not sure if this is the first time na narinig ninyo si policy log, but it's a very important logbook wherein you just keep tabs of what the policy violations are, because this will speak more of how effective or how ineffective our policy are. So, isa siya sa mga importanteng to keep. So again, proceeding to the steps. Number 1, identify the need for policy review. Baka mamaya gusto lang natin, sayang naman ang resource, no? Kung gusto lang natin mag-review pero hindi naman kinakailangan. So regarding policy issues, policy custodian, more often than not, by default, si HR yan. No? The policy custodian will decide whether to either log the issue, tapos later na lang natin i-review. Halimbawa, 1 or 2 instances lang naman nagkaroon ng problema. So we keep tabs of that. And then, i-address natin yung problema. Halimbawa, 1 or 2 tao, hindi nila masyadong naintindihan yung policy mo for timekeeping and attendance. You have a sit down with them. You know, as policy custodian, you have a sit down with them and then ask them directly, ano ba dito yung mahirap, ano ba dito yung hindi clear sa policy? Ano ba dito yung nagiging mahirap for you to comply? And then you try to find out, no, paano ba natin matutulungan si employee to be able to abide or to comply with what is being required dun sa policy. Ngayon naman, should you decide to proceed with a review, sana yan yung mga instances na talagang kailangan na. Kasi yun nga, even if there have been instances na non-compliance, 1 or 2, to consider baka very minimal ito. Yung population nyo, 3,000, may 5 violators, and then you would like to suggest to proceed with the policy review. Sayang yung resources, baka hindi pa talaga time. So you have to identify the need. Okay? Secondly, conduct a research. No, there are a lot of relative information pertaining to your policies in terms of timekeeping and attendance, work from home, telecommuting. There are different literatures available, and then you benchmark, no? Ano ba yung mas magandang gawin? Hindi na kasi effective to sa amin. Sa ganitong industry ba, paano ba nila nakikip yung mga employees nila to be at work all the time, no? Or to be reporting at work on time. 'Di ba? Ano yung mga ginagawa nila? Baka hindi naman policy. Baka naman they are experimenting between yung ating mga motivations, no? Yung mga tinatawag nating rewards. Pwedeng doon sila nagfo-focus. So pwede na working pa din yung policy nila tapos sinasabayan pa nila ng rewards. So may policy, may rewards. So, nai-elicit nila yung behavior. Baka you can benchmark on that. So, that is conducting a research. And then, next one is, of course, after your research, you try to formulate a draft, no, depending on the context of change, urgency ng timing, kagaya no sa work from home natin, mabilis natin siyang draft. At salamat, from 2019, nagkaroon na tayo ng telecommuting law from the Department of Labor and Employment. So, naging madali para sa atin yung guidance and nilocalize na lang natin siya in accordance to our organizational need. So that is one. And then yun nga, you formulate a draft and then try to find out kung pwede mo na siyang mai-consult dun sa iyong mga stakeholders. Kasi nga, when you formulate a draft, ang napaka-importante dyan, backup ka ng data. So number one, you do your research, but you also prepare your data. Kasi definitely, the stakeholders would ask you, why is there a need to review this policy now? Right? Why are you requesting to enact this policy now? Yan yung mga common questions ng stakeholders before they actually approve a policy. You might understand it from your level kasi ikaw yung writer ikaw yung policy custodian Pero sa kanila, sa stakeholders, madaming tanong yan. Tatanungin din, gusto mo ng policy na work from home. Tapos sinabi mo sa work from home, we shall provide 5,000 pesos to employees monthly for them to be able to work from home for the internet connectivity, electricity consumption, and so and so. But definitely the employer or the stakeholder would ask you, sandali lang, kaya ba natin i-sustain yan? So data, kailangan prepared ka. Remember, do not come to the stakeholders unarmed. Dapat prepared ka, more than the policy draft, dapat meron ka ding data. You assume all the question na pwede nilang tanungin. And you're the best judge na makakapagsabi, paano ba magbe-behave si ma'am o si sir pag sinabi ko to sa kanya? You know, stakeholders can really deep dive into those details with you. So dapat prepared tayo when you formulate your draft. And then when you're ready, so you have that policy consultation with the stakeholders. You know, with other companies, they do have CODI, they do have CODA, no? Yung mga committee on disciplinary action, committee on decorum and investigation. Those people who are part of those committees are also part of the stakeholders that they consult for policy. So, ang importante dyan, you have other sets of eyes looking into your policy. Kasi, admit it, when we write policy, normally nagkakaroon yan ng bias towards to ano ba yung ideal sa'yo on your perspective. But that's the reason why it has to be consulted is because hindi lang naman isang tao ang maaapektuhan ng policy mo, other department as well. So for example, sa operations, dapat dun sa stakeholders mo, meron kang kasamang taga-operations na kinoconsult mo who looks naman at the perspective from the operations team. Teka, ano bang effect nito sa team ko? Bakit po sila nire-require na magdala palagi ng alcohol? Wala naman yun sa So yung mga ganong klase ng ng consultation. It should happen para yung policy mo serves its purpose na for the common good siya and not just single perspective. And you open that up also. You open yourself also into learning, no? Nakikita mo ngayon ano bang perspective ng IT, ano bang perspective ng operation, sa finance, ano bang effect nito. So yun yung pinakamagandang holistic consultation of the policy. Again, ang policy, custodian tayo ng policy sa HR. We try as much, as our best para maging encompassing yung ating policy. But then again, it's not just for HR. It's for all other department. So that's why we should be open in terms of consulting this with other department. And wag natin laging isipin that it will be a battle. It's not. It's a learning. It should be seen as a learning discussion, for the policy consultation. Moving on, number 5, of course, another important step in your policy revisit. Approval. The final draft of the policy should be submitted for approval. Now, kagaya sa draft mo, kung nag-research ka, naghanda ka ng data for your draft, nandito ka na, final stage for approval, back-upan mo na ng communication and implementation plan. Kasi syempre, kagaya ngayon, work from home. Sige, naka-work from home na lahat, set up na yung policy ng work from home. Ngayon naman, ang i-update mo, timekeeping policy. Kasi nga, ang hirap na nila i-track ngayon, dahil sa bahay na sila, hindi na natin alam kung ano oras sila nag-work, pero nagpa-file sila ng OT, diba? So, yung mga policy na ganun, paano mo siya i-communicate? Ano ngayon yung magiging implementation plan mo? Paano hindi mo naman sila pwede patawag uli lahat sa office para one-to-one or through a town hall kakausapin mo? Dapat yung request mo for approval, sir, ito po yung bagong policy on timekeeping na gusto ko sanang i-implement. Nakausap ko na po ang operations, ang finance at IT and their supportive. Ito po yung mga changes. And then in terms of rolling out, target po sana namin by this date. And then ito po yung aming communication plan. Alam mo yon, yung parang when you delivered the tray containing the revised policy for approval, you serve it as well with the implementation and rollout plan, communication plan. Kasi, bakit? It would help you, it saves time. It would help you to be able to get that approval from your stakeholder at the fastest rate. Kasi syempre, wala na silang masyadong tanong dahil naibigay mo na lahat ng lahat ng sagot sa pwede nilang itanong. So yun kasi yung pinakamaganda, no? Alam mo yung ins and outs ng policy review mo, ng policy proposal mo. So when that happens, and then you go and get that approval and implement your policy. So sa implementation and communication, tayo bilang HR or policy custodian, so ang responsibility natin is to maintain. Again, babalik ulit tayo doon. So, maintain natin yung policy natin. I-record natin ngayon, effective ba to? Susukatin natin, nagko-comply ba yung mga tao even if they're working from home? Natatrack ba natin religiously yung kanilang attendance? Tama ba yung mga overtime na binabayaran ng kumpanya? Or kulang ba? Baka naman kulang na. Kasi nga, more commonly than not, hindi na na-delineate no, yung time na work time. And then personal time ngayong nag-work from home na yung karamihan. So those are some of the future steps ngayon after you roll out, after you implement and communication. Hindi yun dun natatapos. That's why policy custodian. So you have to take care of it. All right? And then there you go, the maintenance and review. No? So nilag mo, paano ba naging effective, hindi ba effective, paano ba natin ito magiging something that employees automatically follows. No? So maybe you can do an audit compliance. Alam ba ng mga tao to? Si manager ba alam to? Baka mamaya team member alam, si manager hindi alam, si supervisor hindi alam. So I always believe yung ating mga supervisors and managers are extension, no? Bandwidth extension sila ni HR kasi they have that HR capability and responsibility in their roles, no? Bilang sila ay mga people managers. So yeah. Alright, so what are the anticipated results kapag ka nag-policy review ka? Well, pwedeng may change, no? Pwedeng may change na nagawa dun sa policy, mga minor amendments. Pag sinabi nating minor amendments, normally, this would only pertains to pinalitan mo yung pangalan ng form. Pero yun pa rin yung form. No? Kung dati, log sheet, ngayon at timekeeping sheet. So parang ganon. Those are editorial changes. Ang tawag natin doon sa policy review, minor amendments. Ngayon, pag major amendments, it means na most of the content had changed already. So ito kinakailangan nito ng in-depth communication, explaining what changed on the policy. Halimbawa, nag-change ka sa leave. Yung pala major yung amendment to sa policy, sick leave na nagkaroon ka ng exclusions, inclusions, no? Hindi yun editorial. It's something that is major and that would definitely need to be communicated to employees. Major amendment ang tawag natin doon. And then lastly, pwede namang yung policy mo i-revoke na kasi based on your review, hindi na natin to kailangan. Hindi na applicable ngayon. Kasi nga, dati nagde-dress code tayo. Ngayon, we just want people to be themselves, to come to the office by themselves. So, okay. No longer no dress code, just a certain requirement that they go to the office presentable, no? Presentable professionally, and that's okay. So you put that policy out of the active policy already, and you archive it. So those are the possible results of policy review. Now we go into the new normal. So ano ba yung mga changes, ano yung impact nito sa atin, ano pa ba yung mga kailangan nating gawin. Meron ba sa policy review changes in the new normal? Meron pa ba? Ang dami mo nang sinabi kanina, Miss Kristine. Sinabi mo na kapag hindi na change yung, kapag ka hindi na na-elicit yung behavior, kapag ka hindi na, sinusunod yung policy, kapag ka may issue, ano pa ba? Meron pa ba? Definitely, meron pa. Konti na lang naman. To be honest, dalawa lang sila. So at this point in time, sa changes in the new normal, we have to look at our policy, its applicability. The policies should be reviewed for its applicability based on the current situation of the business and the environment it operates. Naka-ECQ, naka-GCQ, naka-MECQ, at kung anumang quarantine yung meron tayo, applicable pa ba yung policy natin? Those are the things that we have to change. No? So that is one trigger, whether your policy is still applicable. And number one is adaptability. Dito naman naging enabler ka. Ito naman yung pagiging proactive policy custodian mo. No, you are now an enabler. You create policy. No, policies needs changing so that it is able to adapt to the business environment and needs of the management and employees. You enable the continuity of the business. You enable the employees to keep on working. And at the end of the day, you have enabled the continuity of productivity of your organization. So dalawa lang siya. Applicable pa ba yung policy ko ngayon? Ngayong new normal, ano ba yung hindi na applicable dito? That's how you analyze it. And then, what policy can help you adapt to this new normal? So normally, yun na nga, karamihan sa atin, nag-telecommute, nag-remote work, nag-work from home. So those are samples of the policy that makes them adaptive to the change. So what are the common policies that review ngayon, ngayong new normal? Yan na. First, titignan mo muna bago ka maglista ng policy dyan. So tignan mo muna, ano ba yung current, policy issues for your organization. So meron yan dalawang part, external at saka internal. So sa external, ano ba yung current laws and guidelines na meron tayo? Ano ba sabi ni Dole? Ano ba sabi ng occupational safety? Ano ba dapat ganito? So check those. Second is issues that address important concerns and support the need internally. Yan. So may issue si management, lack of productivity. Ano yung support na kailangan ni employee for them to be able to be productive, diba? So yun yung dalawang part na titignan mo ngayon. Okay? So external, these are the most recent, not recent, but over a year, practically from 2019 up to present na mga DOLE advisories, kasama na dyan lahat ng implementation of flexible work, guidelines on employment preservation, and then yung sa admin of vaccines and submission of reports ng ating COVID form, as part of the safety regulations. So, alin ba dyan sa mga advisories na yan yung kinakailangan nating i-align yung ating internal guidelines, Madami yan, especially dito sa guidelines on employment preservation upon the resumption of business operations. Yan. Okay? So, and all of those, let me just go back very quickly. So, all of these advisories are available in the website of Department of Labor and Employment. If you want to revisit and try to align your policies, it is there. Okay? Now, you analyze these issuances, these policies. Tanong mo sa sarili mo, na-experience na ba namin to dati? Paano ba namin to hinandle noon? Noon nagkaroon ng baha, noon nagkaroon ng bagyo, ano ba yung naging business continuity response ng kumpanya? Did we provide assistance sa employees? Yung mga ganong bagay. So all of these questions will definitely help you analyze as you move forward in terms of updating your policies in the most recent regulations that was published. What are the most reviewed HR policies? Yan. Kung wala, yung iba kasi, dati pa meron ng remote work, pero in-update nila since naging essential need na siya to have. So remote work policy, leave policy, no? Napaka-importante, grabe, sobrang daming concerns nito from the past months with regards to the leave policy. Kasi bakit? Nag-work from home na yung mga tao pero may nag-a-apply pa ng leave. Diba? So yun yung isa sa mga challenge ng mga managers tsaka HR. Teka lang, nasa bahay ka na, isang ka pa pupunta. So yun naman yung mga policy na kailangan nating i-revisit. Sandali lang, sir. Siyempre, tao din yan. Kailangan din yan ng pahinga from work. So kahit na nasa bahay lang siya, dapat ina-acknowledge pa rin natin na pwede pa rin siya mag-file ng leave. Kasi minsan, yun naman din yung nagiging concern ng mga managers, ng supervisors, na teka, dapat yung leave policy natin, sinasabi na dahil nasa bahay na sila, hindi na sila pwede mag-file. No, sir. Tao po tayo. So nagkakaroon din tayo ng need for rest and relaxation, no? So that's one thing. And then of course benefits, dahil nga ang demand ngayon for taking care of ourselves, taking care of our employees, we are enjoined. Corporations, companies are enjoined by the Department of Labor and Employment na to take care of their employees as much as they could. So we revisit our benefits policy. Ano na ba yung nabigay? Ano pa yung hindi pa nabibigay? No? And then, last two, OKRs, ang ating objectives and key results. Dati napakadali. You sit down, discuss the objectives, the company provides you this. Pero ngayon kasi we're living in somehow a bit uncertain pa rin as of the moment. Kailan ba matatapos? Kailan ba babalik? Ano ngayon yung objectives ng company? Paano ngayon na measure yung performance ko? Ano yung kailangan ko i-deliver para makapasa pa din ako sa performance review ko? No? So your OKR is also one of the most reviewed HR policies. Kung hindi nyo pa ito na-revisit, maybe it's time for you guys to have a sit down and take a look at how you do the performance management. What is the measurement of the performance of the employees now that practically baka hindi naman sila talaga ganun ka-visible, no? So syempre ngayon results-oriented naman, no? Hindi na tayo makakabilang hindi na natin makikita physically or one-to-one So ano naman yung expectations of results? Lastly is the talent acquisition. Yan, isa sa mga identified challenge no ni HR. Paano tayo magre-recruit ngayon? Paano tayo nag-i-screen ngayon? Yung onboarding natin, yung orientation natin, 'di ba? Ang daming encompassing dun sa questions dun sa ating talent acquisition policy. Paano na natin siya gagawin ngayon? Paano natin matatrack yung progress ng ating newbie? No? Sino na yung magiging culture body niya? Paano pa niya makikilala yung mga ibang empleyado? Diba? So this HR policy is the most reviewed kasi ginawa ng ating mga HR colleagues, nag-adapt na sila. No? Yung iba, syempre, virtual interview, virtual panel interview, virtual training, virtual onboarding, lahat online na. No? And sometimes they do send the care package as a welcome kit no kay employee dun sa bagong na onboard. So there are a lot of things that this pandemic or that this global situation had required out of the HR team and the management of course as well. So for us to be able to adapt, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, research, do benchmarking, and those will help you gain your policy updates. Right? Okay. Moving on, policy upkeep and management, no? These are just parang mga freebies for this session, no? It's not really part of what I've promised to provide, but just to give you a holistic overview of the entire policy review and analysis. Ang sumunod doon is the policy upkeep and management. Tatlo yan that I am suggesting and recommending everyone to do. Number one, you should have a policy inventory. You should have a policy committee, secondly. And thirdly, you should have a policy logbook. No? When we say policy inventory, it's a list of your policy, outlining all of it, outlining the owner, date of publication, para tong para tong yung mga goods, mga pagkain, merong manufacturing date, merong expiration date. So it's best that you have that in one Excel file, one sheet, so that you would have to browse through all your printed materials. Alin ba dito yung kailangan na ng pagre-review? So you put down all that, have an inventory of what policies you already have, and then you can track when it is due for review. Now you have to have your policy committee. Again, hindi mo pasan ang daigdig. no? Don't take all the burden of reviewing the policy. Call your managers, call your stakeholders, and sit down and have a discussion with regards to how you can have a sound decision in terms of reviewing and analyzing that policy that would serve the need of the employee and the company. And of course, the logbook. Yung logbook naman, iba ito dun sa inventory. Kasi ang ilalog mo dito, yung issues and violations of the policy, no? Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, which will help you in the future. When it's due for review, you have your data to back up why you want to change it or bakit kailangan mas maging mahigpit, diba? So, these three things will definitely be very helpful when you review and assess all your company policies. All right? So, another part of the tip, no, policy content sa akin as someone who had already written some of the policies of the companies I've worked with, no, these are normally my recommendation. Definitely, you have to have the policy name. Kung possible that you create a policy number, then create a policy number. Dapat nandiyan yung effective date. Kung ni-revise nyo na yung policy na yun, dapat nandoon din yung revision date, approval status, sino ba nag-approve, reference ng policy nito, reference sa guideline ng DOLE or what have you, and then purpose of the policy, para saan ba to? Main statement is also a part of the body of the policy. Sa policy, we normally use mga jargons, so you should define that para hindi na misinterpret ng employees. Minsan kasi mahirap no? Binigyan mo na ng copy si employees, kinommunicate na kay employees, pero hindi pala naiintindihan yung mga terms. So dapat you have that part ng policy content mo where you define this key concept, no? And then eligibility or scope, para kanino ba ang policy na to? Is it sa functional or is it yung mas karamihan, no? Positions in the organization responsible for implementing and monitoring this. Siyempre, hindi lang HR yan. Kasama dyan na upholder natin ng policies, supervisors, team leaders, managers, no? Kung sino man yung may authority over the team. And then procedures for carrying out the policy. Everyone is expected to carry out the policy. And then, of course, you list down, this is different from a reference, no? You list down other policies and documents related to this policy. For example, a marketing policy, no? Sa marketing kasi normally meron tayo dyan mga binibigay na representation policy para sa ating mga sales people, no? They have that certain authority to spend para sa mga clients and all. And then, meron kang anti-bribery policy. Ano naman ibig sabihin nun? Yung anti-bribery policy mo would be to prevent naman yung mga employees natin from spending too much just to get the client. Diba? So, yan yung mga sinasabi natin na you list down all the other policies and documents relating to each other. So, pagka may isang tao na nagbasa ng anti-bribery policy, ay meron din, ng marketing expense policy, meron din palang anti-bribery policy. So, these two are connected. So, you can connect these policies all together. Mas connected, mas malinaw, mas maganda, and you prevent the employees from committing mistakes. No? Kasi mas kompleto siya. So, ayan. There are multiple ways of how you can deliver your HR policy, and definitely one of those is written. And then you can send out booklets or bulletins. Normally, nakakatanggap nito yung mga newbies. Ay, ito nga pala yung aming employee handbook. No? Nandiyan lahat, pakibasa. So, kasama yan doon. And then verbal instructions. Normally, when you have new policies, you communicate that either through town hall, group meetings, team sessions. And paigtingin mo pa, i-publish mo sa company newspaper, no, or mga newsletter, electronic newsletter, company insider, no, kasama yan doon sa ating mga gustong means how this communication can reach our employees. And lastly, kung gustong-gusto mo pa na mas lalong matutunan, no, you create a campaign out of your policy. Sino may sabing para lang sa mga programs ang campaign? Ang campaign pwede rin yan sa mga policy mo. Halimbawa, meron kang policy on diversity and inclusion, diba? That is also something that can help your employees understand yung iyong policy of diversity and inclusion. You create a campaign out of it, 'di ba? Meron ka ng policy and then you also did something fun for the employees. Minsan, pagka nagka-campaign tayo, meron pa tayo mga paswag para sa employees and they get something out of it. Kasi tayo, 'di ba, sometimes when it's libre, mas natatanda, oh, nilibre, at nakalibre ako ng ganito. Ay, binigyan kami ng company ng ganito. Oo, tama, nung nilaunch yung policy na ganito, nakatanggap kami ng ganito eh. So you make it remarkable, lalo na kung sobrang importante ng policy mo. A campaign to support that will definitely be effective, no? So those are just some forms of how you deliver HR policies. I do have some policy essentials, but these are basically repetitions of all the things that I'm saying this. I am okay to provide everyone a copy of this presentation for your reference. And then must have, yeah. So I speed up, no? Dito sa must have HR policies, please take note. Anti-harassment, non-discrimination, sexual harassment policy. No, this is a highly recommended policy, no, employment classification. Sometimes kasi there's confusion on that. And then definitely leave time off, meal breaks, timekeeping. You can keep that all together in one policy. Pero kasi may mga ibang kumpanya that they like it na mas hiwa-hiwalay. Sa atin kasi, ako kasi particularly bilang Asian, hindi ko naman nila lahat, pero bilang coming from the Asia, mas gusto ko mas detailed, mas okay eh. So if you break it down into different policy, mas nakikita ko yung importance niya. And then safety and health policy, definitely you need that. Employee conduct, of course, employee code of conduct, attendance and punctuality. So these are all my recommendations to you, the must-have HR policies. Trending policies right now, kagaya nung kanina na most reviewed policies, no, meron tayong tinatawag na remote workers policy. Social media policy, kung wala pa kayo niyan, kasi alam nyo na, trending ngayon sa social media, all our employees are on Facebook, Instagram, o baka outdated na ako, baka may iba pa. So you can have your social media policy as long as it does not violate the privacy of your employees as well, no? So dapat balance yan. Dapat si employee, hindi niya nasasaktan or nasisiraan publicly yung company mo. And at the same time naman si employer, hindi naman niya pinapasok yung privacy ng kanyang employee. Okay? And then of course, as required, drug and alcohol policy, confidentiality and data security policy, these are all in accordance to data privacy. And then mental health policy, pinakakinakailangan, of course, kasama dun sa ating mga labor advisories, which was recently published. No? We are enjoined by our Department of Labor and Employment to promulgate a mental health policy, a mental health and awareness policy in our organizations on supporting our employees, especially in these trying times. Right? So to summarize, policies are made to clarify functions, no, responsibilities. It should be consistent, it should meet standards, and it should be something that's there to make this for decision making to be transparent, no. May policy tayo sa ganito eh. So I'm sorry, hindi natin kayang tanggapin yung sorry dahil nag-violate siya, because this is our policy. So you see the importance of the policy. So hindi pa pwedeng basta sorry na lang si employee. Sorry kasi 20 times na ako na late ng 30 minutes for this month. But you have your policy, diba? So yun yung written documentation mo to answer all of that. And then policy development offers an opportunity to engage with the community. Kagaya ngayon kung ano yung nangyayari sa community natin. No? We were, sabi nga kanina nung isang host natin, we were forced to adapt to the changes that had happened in our environment. And at the same time, it also opens our eyes on how we can engage in our community. Yung ating mga corporate social responsibilities, are we able to help? Did we provide assistance? No? So those things are all coming back to what our policies are, what our company vision, mission are. Okay? And then this one thing I'd like to leave to you guys from Peter Drucker, so the father of management thinking. The management must gear its policies and objectives in such a fashion that employees perform their work. Take note, in such a fashion that employees perform their work. So meaning, your policies, hindi siya pahirap, no? It should be something that enables the employee to be able to work. It implies a consideration of human as a resource having psychological properties, abilities, and limitations requiring same amount of engineering attention as any other resource, no? So kung yung mga computer nga natin sa opisina dapat yan may surge protector, dapat yan sinashutdown ng maayos para hindi masira. Dapat yung mga tao, yung policy natin pagdating sa mga tao with consideration then of their psychological properties or psychological needs. Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Let's say, for example, yun nga, pagdating sa leave, no? Sa bahay na nga nagtatrabaho, magli-leave pa. So we as HR, we are the ones who can actually open the minds of our supervisors, our managers, our management in terms of being flexible and more understanding of the circumstances of our employees at this point. All right? So I hope I was able to impart to you some learnings about policy review and analysis. And thank you so much for spending the hour with me. And yeah, I think I'm open to, if we still have time, maybe a few, if there are questions from the audience.
Yeah, we have some questions, and yes, we do have time. and, we hope you will be open to these questions. Okay, so one of the questions would be, how long should a policy review take until the rollout? Or, when is it going to, how long should it take so it will be actually effective, or whatever, however the review should go? How long does it normally take?
How long does it normally take? Does it, i-rephrase ko lang si question, no? Kung tama ako sa pagkakaintindi ko dun sa tanong. So it means na si policy na-review na-approve na, and then i-roll out na. Yun ba? Tapos gaano katagal from the approval to roll out?
From the steps that you mentioned, but there are certain steps. There's consultation, there's approval. So how long does that normally take? Such that when it is rolled out, it's actually it has effectively gone through the different steps and it's ready to roll out.
Right. That's right. You know, it's actually depending on the need of the policy. For example, kagaya nung sa remote work from home policy ninyo. March 15 last year, nagkaroon tayo ng community quarantine. And that required all of the HR in every corporations to think on their feet and try to find out ano ba yung pwede nilang magawa, paano ba nila i-roll out yung policy. And kung ang turnaround time mo is 30 days for you to be able to review or release a new policy, ang dami nang na-hamper, no? So, kaya ko sinasabi na it depends on the need. Kasi nga, kagaya yung constraint on developing and updating your policy, yung turnaround time niyan would depend on, is this something that we badly needed now?
Yeah.
That would impact the productivity of the company? Or is this review something na can take on a very, hindi naman masyadong matagal, no? Or is this review something that can pass through every step? Kasi yun yung ano natin, yun yung, hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na, ay wala pang 30 days, wag mo muna i-roll out yan.
Right.
Kailangan mo na ngayon.
Kasi si mga HR practitioner, Miss Kristine, we've been like used to follow the normal course of, the policy making process. And yet, when pandemic hit the country in March 2020, parang naging, honestly talaga, Miss Julie, ang tawag nga namin sa mga HR, ay, naging magician tayo lahat. Kasi overnight, you need to change the business landscape because you need to immediately create, policies that will adapt to the new situation. Medyo, yun siguro yung maganda, yung medyo nakaka-challenge dito na gusto namin i-share sa mga young HR practitioners na ang HR dapat lagi tayong handa, no, Miss Kristine?
Oo.
Kumbaga para tayong Girl Scout, laging ready na mag-dive.
Totoo yan, ma'am. Kaya nga kanina, no, Kaya nga, I'm really hoping that everyone would gain something from this session. Kasi 'di ba sabi natin, meron tayong types of policies. Meron tayong reactive at saka proactive. So that having in mind, no, na meron kang reactive policy, which is yun yung na-experience mo nung nag-pandemic, how can you become one step ahead? Paano ka naman ngayon magiging proactive HR? Kasi ayaw mo na ma-experience yung overnight, kailangan mong gumawa ng policy eh, di ba? So, from that point forward, it opened our eyes na okay, I have to think about what if hindi pa tapos tong pandemic. Paano ngayon yung sustainability ng ganitong klaseng team? So, those are, some of the mind-tickling ideas na kailangan dire-diretso pa din eh. Because we have to be proactive. Kasi yun nga, again, sa driver's seat pa din tayo. Even sa ngayong klase ng panahon, HRs are in the driver's seat of how we can help sustain the continuity of the business.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Tin, for that answer. So, we have an idea. It's not like a one size fits all, right? So it actually depends on the need. Right? It's not like, okay, we have to do it in this manner. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. There's another question. I think Miss Rose would be able to raise that question.
Yes, hi Tin, Kristine, Ms. Jeline, hello there. So there's another question here. It says, where and how does company culture influence the policy making?
Influence. No,
Yes.
influence. I think medyo yung term na na influence kasi parang dapat baliktad. So for me lang naman if there is a problem or a challenge sa ating company culture that we would want to change, dapat si policy ang magi-influence dun sa change na yon, dun sa culture. Kasi it's culture, it's not something that would influence, but rather it is a factor that you consider, no, when you are writing your policy. Kasi sandali, paano ko ba? In a global perspective, no, culturally, iba-iba tayo ng behavior sa work. People from Korea, from Japan, they do things differently. They work differently. Tayo gusto natin may overtime payment tayo. Sa kanila kailangan matapos nila yung trabaho nila kasi hodang may overtime sila o wala. So that calls for different policy as well. So kung yun ang culture na sinasabi natin, I think it's more of a factor to consider, but it's definitely not something that should influence your policy. Again, sabi natin kanina, ano ba yung essentials ng policy natin? Dapat ang policy natin is fair, no? Fair siya for everyone and applicable to all. So dapat hindi tayo may influence. Yun.
Okay,
so tama, no? Medyo challenging talaga na sometimes merong conflict, no, when it comes to like corporate culture versus kung ano yung expectations ng mga tao on how your policy would look like. So medyo challenging siya. Sometimes nagiging cha-cha or tango siya. Go to back and forth tayo.
Push and pull yan eh. Push and pull eh. Oh, we cannot have that policy because our people are like this. And that's the reason why your business is like this, is because your people are like that. That's why you have to have this policy. Kaya siya nagiging push and pull. But then again, it depends, no? What is the more important? Is it we want to change because we want to uplift our business? Or is it because we want to satisfy yung bang yung gusto lang? Hindi eh, okay na kami sa ganitong klase na ba't pa natin babaguhin? Kaya nga natin babaguhin kasi hindi tayo umaangat, no? Sometimes ganun eh, yung old thinking na, okay naman ba't pa babaguhin? It worked before, bakit pa natin kailangan baguhin ngayon? Saan ka na dinala nung it worked before? Did you excel? Did you progress? Had it made an impact to your organization? Ano na ngayon yung employees mo? Are they still engaged? So those are the questions that can help you, hindi naman sumagot, no? That can help you persuade your management pagdating sa mga policy changes.
Ang ganda. Nakita ko yung beauty. Napakaganda, Miss Kristine. Napakaganda ng line, ano. That a policy that you should create, you can come up with, should be something that will engage your employee, that will enhance their performance and productivity. So, napaka-beautiful po talaga HR practitioners nang matry natin yung mahalin kung paano yung policy writing and yung policy review. So, marami akong natutunan kay Miss Kristine. Overwhelmed po ako.
Yeah,
In fact,
Janet, yeah, I think it would be great now. So let's take advantage while she's here. So there's another question. I think it's a good follow up from what was just discussed just now. It is to ask like how do you measure the effectivity of your policies? And another probably it has a connection as to what if there are certain practices. Now, what are your thoughts? So, other than how do you measure the effectivity, is what if there are certain practices, but it's not written in the policy? It's not part of a written policy, and that it's not there in the written policy because it just might be disadvantageous to the company,
lawyer.
to the employer.
Oo, totoo naman din yun, no? Sa atin kasi sa HR, if it's not painted, no? Painted na nga hindi na nga documented eh. Sa atin kasi sa HR, if it's not something that's painted, assume that it never happened. That's why the most important thing is to document. I know you heard this before, no, sa ating mga mentors sa HR network natin, pero that's really true and it's really important. If it's not something that is written, it never happened. So even if you know that it's happening, even if it's something that everybody is doing, if it's not something that's written, it can always be refute ng company. Oh no, that's just one of. It's not something that you should enjoy perpetually. So, yung mga ganun. That's why kapag kami mga bagong practices, benefits, no, kailangan tayo HR, mabilis tayo gumawa ng policies. Magbibigay na po ba tayo palagi ng bonus? Sige, policy natin yan. So, yung mga mga ganung step, kasi nga, it won't help anyone if we allow that to not to be documented. So, yun yung sa akin.
Yeah.
And then, dun sa isang question, no, ma'am, how do we measure the effectivity of the policy? Again, balik tayo dun sa triggers natin kanina. Sinusunod pa ba? Madami bang violators? And then, naging maganda ba yung performance ng ating team because they are all working on time, they are delivering? Yun yung mga measurements of of the effectivity of your policy. So, kung hindi naging effective yung policy mo, trigger yan. Baka may mali. Baka hindi siya applicable.
Okay, so
Agree.
yeah, magandang follow-up naman to dyan, no? Kasi it's all about how to measure and all that. So, now, how are you now going to socialize? So how can you make it fun or socialize certain, yun ang question eh, how do you socialize certain policies now that we have hybrid or blended working environments? Some are work from home, some are still on site. So yeah, how could you make it fun or socialize all these policies given that there's a blended environment, working environment?
That's really good question, no? Very timely, and something that is also connected to what we are doing in our own company as well. So sa policy kasi, kagaya nga nung sinabi ko kanina, if that is something that you really want to be embedded in the perspective of your employees, you create a campaign. Ano ba yung pwede nating campaign? Kasi sometimes when you launch a policy, pwede kang, kung may budget for that particular policy, you create a campaign. Ano yung mga pwedeng campaign? Mag-launch ka ng pa-challenge, pa-game, wherein people are going to participate and then you select a winner. So people will remember that when you launch this policy, nung nilaunch tong DNI, which is Diversity and Inclusion, nagpa-photo contest sila. So dito sa office namin, ito yung sinabit namin na entry, kami yung nanalo. So people now know na meron silang diversity and inclusion policy kasi sumali sila dun sa pag-game mo na photo contest, which is showing diversity and inclusion. Diba? That's just one off. Yung kanina yung sinasabi ko, swag. something what all employees would get, no? You give them out like t-shirts. In accordance to your DNI policy, you give them t-shirts, you give them care package, you give them pens, something that would make them remember kung ano yung policy na ni-roll out mo. I don't think may magsasabi receiving something free is not fun. So, the essence of giving that something out for free is already fun in itself, no? And then you engage your employees by what? Doing virtual launch session, no? Nandoon kayong lahat, and basta kung may budget lang naman, madaling gawing masaya. Alam din naman yan ng HR. So, yun lang. When you try to think of ways of making your policy more fun, it's also good that you get the support of the management to provide some budget for the employees.
Ang ganda ng follow-up question to that. Because you talked about budget. Because the next question is, what are the common issues of the employers to implement policies? No? I know you mentioned that, of course, the budget is a concern of employers or business owners. So what are other common issues of employers?
Yun talaga. Kasi number one yan. Alam natin yan. Yan yung realidad ngayon, no? Budget talaga yan. Kaya minsan, kapag si HR papunta na sa pinto ng boss, sinasara na eh. Kasi alam nila, manghihingi na naman ng budget si HR. Kasi normally, yan ang pinakamalaking challenge, no? Gusto ni employer maging masunurin ng mga tao, gusto ni employer maging masaya yung mga tao, pero kasi ito lang yung budget, no? So minsan, yun naman yung nagiging challenge sa atin mga HR. So maliban sa budget, ano pa ba? Yung buy-in, no? Buy-in, isa sa mga challenge yan. Kasi lalo na kung ang stakeholders mo are coming from different departments. To each of his own yan. That is really accepted, no? Ano ba yung mas makakabuti para sa grupo ko? So tayo, ayan na naman, magician na naman tayo, binabalanse natin yan. Sir, kasi ganito yan. So nasa objectives ng policy mo na dapat you are able to be very balanced in terms of prioritizing the needs of the different teams, the needs of the different departments. Okay ba yan kay finance? Okay ba yan kay IT? Ayaw ni IT yan kasi siya yung gagawa ng ganito. Yung mga ganyang bagay. So all of that, encompassingly, dapat kasama yan as you conceptualize, as you revisit your policy, as you analyze your policy. Para pagdating sa kanila, hindi nila sasabihin may pinapanigan si HR. Kasi si HR, dapat walang pinapanigan, diba? So we are the bridge between the employees and the management, and we should be someone that the company and the employees sees who are the fair, as a fair person. So who listens? So budget, buy-in, and lastly, yung communications, no? So dapat ang rollout ng policy, kahit na suportado ka ni management, kung hindi carefully planned ang iyong comms, you're setting that policy up to fail, no? So dapat based on how your culture or how your organization is currently operating, how your culture are currently set up, dapat ganun din yung plan mo for the communication sa rollout. So halimbawa kagaya sa amin, no, even if English is the universal language that we are all using, and I believe all of our policies, most of our policies are written in the universal language, there are still territories that would require us to write our policies in bilingual. So kung halimbawa, ganun, may branch kayo sa sa Bisaya o sa kung saan man, and then most commonly mas gusto nila it's written in their local language, dapat suportahan natin 'yon, no? For us to be able to communicate clearly. Sa akin yun lang. Yun ang tatlong common challenges as we have experienced, no? Budget, and then yung buy-in, and then yung communication.
Okay, speaking of communication, Miss Kristine, may question tayo dito, sabi niya, or I think you can give some inputs or advice. Sabi niya, how do you do follow-up when the managers or the stockholders or the takers takes too long to review and approve the policy? So minsan, syempre may ano tayo may timeline tayo, may time frame tayo. So Yun yung question niya. Maybe you can give us a few inputs or tips on that.
Oo, totoo, na-experience natin yan, no? Tayo kasi minsan, HR, "Uy, sir, due yan sa ganito ha, sa June 5 dapat tapos na yan." Tayo ganyan eh. Okay yon, sinasabi natin kung kailan. Pero we fail to reiterate what would happen if hindi na-meet yung deadline. So if you are very clear, sir, kasi kapag to hindi natin na-roll out by June 5, yung mga employees natin baka hindi na po magtrabaho kasi ang sabi natin, to ganito eh. You know, you open their minds in the consequences of what are we going to face kapag hindi na finalize yung policy, kapag hindi na roll out yung policy. For example, sir, hindi natin in-update, hindi mo pa po ina-approve yung update ng timekeeping policy natin. Asahan nyo na lang din po that for this month, madami pa ding taong malilate. Madami pa ring taong absent kasi hindi nyo pa rin po pina-finalize yung policy. And that has a direct effect on your production, sir. O, diba? Kabit-kabitin mo na. Kumbaga, lahat yun tuhugin mo na from counting, kung gaano kadami yan, ano yung impact niyan sa productivity, and then kung mas maikakabit mo pa siya on a larger scale. Kasi sir, kung ganyan yung productivity natin, mas bibili ng mga tao yung ganitong brand. Diba? So, you become someone who analyze on a bigger scale para mapapalpa mo yung set mo. Para mapa-finalize mo yung policy.
Yun nga po, Miss Kristine, yung sinasabi po nung na bigger role ng HR, no? Na dapat tayo yung nagpo-provide ng bigger picture sa kanila para magkaroon sila ng informed decision making. So, because these are something that they don't really see. Iba kasi yung perspective nila. Sa kanila, numbers. Sa ating quality. When you put all of this together, it can become, easier to achieve. Siguro ma'am, i-connect ko na rin ito kasi connected ito dun eh. Medyo nahirapan siyang mapa-appreciate sa management. Ang tanong dito ni, kaninong tanong ito, sorry, kay Mary Lodit, sabi niya dito, what if daw yung mga department heads are not very much open to like implementing this particular policy? How would HR solve this problem? Alam mo na yung policy yung solve sa common issues or concerns ng mga tao, and yet department heads or managers or executives are not open.
Tama, no? May magaganyan din talaga tayo na experience. Ang sa akin dyan is, are we as HRs open as well in terms of understanding why these managers are not being supportive? Minsan kasi ganyan tayo, no? Subjective eh. Kasi ginawa ko tong policy na to eh, pinaghirapan ko to eh, 3 linggo ko tong ginawa eh, tapos ayaw niyang pirmahan. Bakit kaya? Alamin mo. Baka naman that is something that would impede their workflow, diba? Baka naman it has a direct effect on one of their employees. Yung pala may trauma or something, tapos gusto mo maging sociable, diba? So yung mga ganyang policy, I still believe that most of our stakeholders, our managers, they don't say no just because they want to say no. No? If they are professional enough, they definitely have their reasons why they are saying no. So sometimes kasi ganun eh. Minsan kasi because siguro dahil overworked na din tayo, dami-dami natin iniisip, gusto natin ma-finalize yung policy, gusto natin ma-roll out. Minsan hindi na din natin na-take into considerations. Kailangan intindihin din natin. What's the reason? Bakit hindi ka supportive? Ngayon, pag nakita mo yung reasons na yan, pag nalaman mo yung reason ni manager, ni supervisor, bakit sila hindi supportive doon, then you try to open your mind. Kasi of trying to find ways, how can you now go about the policy update? How can you now persuade your managers to understand na kailangan ito, kung talagang kailangan ito? Kasi yun nga, sometimes tayo as policy custodian, minsan as policy owners, gusto natin ma-approve yan. Diba? Definitely gusto natin ma-approve yan, to be honest. Pero syempre, again, that's why it's a consultation. No? Ang policy na ito ay hindi lang lamang para sa iyo, kung hindi para sa pangkalahatan. So dapat iniintindi din natin kung bakit nagno-no, ano yung pwede nating magawa para ma-influence yan. Kung nag-say sila ng no ngayon, may chances ba na mag-say sila ng yes next year? So, alam mo yan, minsan kasi it's about the timing as well. 'Diba? Hindi tamang panahon na i-release mo yung policy na yan ngayon, lalo na tayo't nasa pandemic. Baka naman yan yung point ni manager. So those are some of the point of views na sa akin, I would like to open up because part of my experience as well, no? Paano ko ba mapapa-oo tong manager na to para sa mag-yes sa policy na to? So I tried to look into the manager's eyes, no? Yun yung tinatawag natin, looking into the manager's eyes na, so bakit kaya ayaw mo? Ano kaya yung nagiging problema? It's just so hard kasi syempre that would also mean that the policy implementation might be pushed back, no, if you try to open yourself na intindihin. Again, it would always depend on the constraints and complications of the policy.
Okay, so Miss Janet, is there one more? Because there are actually two questions that we can merge.
Yeah. Actually, hinahanap ko no kasi ang dami, gumagamit na ako ng dalawa. Ma'am, ang daming question actually, mini-merge na lang po namin.
Ay, so I can merge two questions while
Okay,
you're looking
ma'am.
for what you have. Okay, so there are two questions I'm going to merge. One is how can we keep our employees during this time of pandemic? And another is, which is in connection to that, specifically for the new normal, is there a policy, a best one, or probably a relevant one that can help keep employees during this time of pandemic?
Policy of keeping employees. The question is, the two questions that you asked is definitely relative, although it's missing some context, no? Hindi ko kasi kasi syempre keeping employees would definitely be dependent on the sustainability of the operations of the company. Kaya pa ba ni kumpanya? Diba? Kung kaya pa ni kumpanya, ano ba yung tinatanong natin dito? Are these ways that we would like to find out on how we can keep our employees engaged in their work?
Yeah.
So if that is something that is being questioned, I think ang dapat ditong sagot is that, are you trying to find out what are the needs of your employees? Baka naman individually, they have their own needs pero no one is listening. So you have to empower your supervisors, your managers to be able to make time to their team members, reach out to them. Uy, mukhang hindi ka na active sa sa reporting mukhang hindi ka na active sa work may problema ba? Baka makatulong ako. So this conversation, hindi kaya yan mag-isa ni HR. As much as we would like to, we simply don't have the bandwidth to do that. And again, kagaya nung sinabi ko kanina, supervisors and managers, they are extensions of the HR responsibilities kasi nga sila yung nilulook up ng kanilang team. And they should have that responsibility and be able to reach out to their team members na, uy, okay ka lang ba? Hindi ka nag-join kanina dun sa morning huddle natin may problema ba? Baka may sakit ka. Sometimes people, they just want to be asked, no?
Yeah.
Kasi if you do so much, sayang yung effort, baka hindi naman yan yung kailangan nila.
Yeah, probably the question is more in the context of course, pandemic has forced certain changes. And so what would be the best policy that could address the change, which partially, of course, I think the answer is within what you just mentioned. No? So if the managers can step in, but what if one question to that is, what if the manager mismo ang ayaw mag-follow ng policy? So that's not the question.
Masakit sa ulo yun, ano?
Yeah.
As HR.
Parang there are changes na nga, and probably based on changes, the managers will be the ones more challenged in following that certain policy or perhaps managing the changes that are happening.
Na natin yan si manager. Kausapin na natin si manager. Baka naman si manager mismo yung may challenge. Siyempre si manager, may manager yan. Diba? Yeah. So ngayon, yun naman ang go-to mo. Yun naman yung go-to mo. Oy, sir, yung si sir ganito mukhang may problema kasi ganito po yung nagiging challenge namin sa kanila as HR. Can you shed some light for us to be able to understand ano ba yung gino-go through niya ngayon? No, it's more lalo na ngayon, no. Alam ko it's very easy to say na parang sometimes people gets rude or sometimes people just say no. It's easy to judge them like that. Pero to be honest, at circumstances like this, yung pinakakailangan lang din talaga is for us to open our minds. Probably there is something going on. Hindi natin alam yung burden ng bawat empleyado natin. We don't have that capacity to know. And we should be more of understanding no? Understanding, lending an ear, trying to find out. I know it's exhausting. Medyo nakakapagod yun. Kaya nga ang sa akin, the best influence would be, or the best move is to influence your supervisors, your managers, to become HR persons themselves, no? Parang mag-behave din sila kagaya ni HR. So,
Ito
kung
siguro ma'am connected kasi
uh,
parang yung partnership po ng mga line managers and HR practitioners, no? Sabi niya dito, now that especially now that most of the employees are on telecommuting or working from home, I think she's asking for like the best way or the best policy that we could implement in terms of monitoring performance of employees in a work from home setting.
So, babalik tayo sa objectives and key results, no? Ano ba yung expectations? Na-set ba nyo yan? Say for example, this is work hours. Work hours na lang ba ngayon yung pagbabasihan ng kanyang performance? We can have all the policies, no? We can definitely provide you off-the-shelf recommendations na mga OKRs. But remember, OKRs, dapat yan in alignment with your company objectives, no? Ano ba yung ngayong year na to, saan ba gusto pumunta ni company? Ano ba yung gusto ni company na ma-achieve? Bilang empleyado ng kumpanyang ito, ano yung mako-contribute ko para ma-achieve ni company yung kanyang objectives? So number 1, babalik ka uli sa management. I said, meron ba tayong sinet na objectives for this year? Ano po ba yung goals natin for this year? Paano po ba makaka-contribute dyan ng finance, ang IT, ang HR? So, kasi kami po mga work from home kami. And then we will try to see ano ba yung mga key results area that we can work on so that we are contributing in the achievement of the company goal.
Okay. Right. So alignment, Miss
Alright.
Jolene, no?
I think as of the moment we have time for the rest of what we have prepared for ano no. I think we have indulged Miss Kristine already with a lot of her time in terms of answering our questions. Do we have any more, Miss Rose, Miss Janet?
Miss
Just
Rose,
to
parang
add,
important yung last.
Before I ask yung last question sa chat box, there I just like to input also I think related to sa topic ni Miss Kristine kanina kasi there was an question regarding yung timeline ng policy review. We just like to also to acknowledge yung insight ni Sir June Aspacio. May dinagdag siya sa team kay Miss Kristine na sabi niya, policy review if company is with CBA or collective bargaining agreement every 2 or 3 years daw po, or if there are new legislation or external legislations that would impact the company, which I think na-mention din ni Ms. Kristine kanina. And a few comments, sabi din ni Sir Jonas Pasio, culture of the company is an evolving thing. Policies implement this culture, be that it's may, policies must be legally compliant. Okay, so we always have to check on the legalities as well. So, meron pa ditong questions, Miss Teen. Medyo actually marami, 'di ba? Both from Facebook at saka sa Zoom chat room natin. Okay. Sabi niya rito, paano po kung ang policy ay naisip lang ni manager without legal basis?
Gusto ko lang.
So lang yun.
Balik tayo kanina doon sa sinabi na gusto lang, no? Again, hindi siya gusto lang. So, yung policy, ideally, you have a body, you have a committee wherein you consult the effectivity of the policy, kung kailangan ba talaga to have that particular policy. Kaya nga, hindi siya HR lang. So, it is definitely recommended that you have the stakeholders to consult with dun sa mga policy na ito at hindi lang something na naisip. Kasi if it's something na naisip, again, balik tayo, ano ba yung sinabi ni Peter Drucker, yung mga tao, resource mo yan, oo, pero they have psychological properties. Hindi yan, oo, definitely, they signed an employment contract which also goes with it yung kanilang compliance dun sa internal company policies. But then again, tayo HR, tayo naman has that right to question or ask the management or the manager who had promulgated that policy, no? Bakit po ba tayo meron nitong policy? Ano po ba yung impact nito sa ating organization? Makakatulong po ba ito? bakit po natin to ginawa? Naiisip po ba natin yung consequences nito sa mga tao and how they would be feeling pagka nilabas natin yung policy nito? So things like that. Hindi naman tayo syempre, as HRs, we have that authority to not naman to question, siguro to get to know yung policy na ini-implement ng ating managers. Again, we have to work harmoniously. We have to work together. We should not be against each other. And if there are, grievances or concerns that pertains to the policies that are being launched by different managers, balik tayo dun sa ating review. Mag-isa lang ba siyang gumawa nun? No? So, how can we make that policy more acceptable kung talagang something na kinakailangan? So, it's more about trying to go into the details why there is a policy like that.
Okay, got it, Miss Kristine. May isa pa po. May isa pang question. Siguro na to, baka second to the last o last na nating question, Miss Jolene and Miss
Last
Miss
na
Janet,
natin, kota na tayo kay Miss Kristine.
Yeah, last na
Oo
natin.
nga.
Yeah.
Sobrang dami. Maganda kasi yung topic at the same time the learning is so very wide, no? I think engage yung mga ka-HR natin kasi timely din naman to. Since I think most of us are on this, reviewing and analyzing our policies. So last question. If the company is under essential needs industry and the CEO wants the employees to work on site and the employee refuse, is it a violation? Ayun yung tanong niya, Ma'am Christine.
The company, the management would like the employee to work on site and the employee does not want to work. What is the policy?
Yeah, I know it is quite it just might be beyond the scope of what you mentioned, the objective. It's really just a basic policy and not necessarily a specific situation that that has to be tackled at this point. So although we are thankful for that question, we're grateful for that question. If you were there, Miss Clara, during the first 2 Saturdays, that question would have been quite relevant because that was the topic of the past 2 webinars. So thank you very much for that question. But thank you, Ms. Christine. Yeah, perhaps the answer to that question is, okay, so what's the policy? Take a look at the policy so you could identify what would be the sanction, what would be what is needed, what is the step that is needed if the employees wouldn't want to go on site, even if the employer, the CEO, wants all his employees in the essential needs industry to go to work now on site. So thank you very much, Ms. Christine. Thank you for indulging all these questions, giving us your time for that and all your expertise, of course. And so at this point, we would like to express our gratitude. We'd like to. Are we going to go picture taking first? Or are we going to have a photo op while
Photo op muna, ma'am.
Photo op muna. So, Ms. Christine, bago namin i-express ang aming gratitude, we'll hold you for a few more minutes and we'll have a photo op opportunity with you. So, everyone, please make sure that your video is on. Okay. So, okay, so everybody's video is on. Give your bestest cheesy smile. And at the count of 5, go show us your smile. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the next batch, I believe.
Next
Another 5
batch.
seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We have 5 batches po.
Okay, so we have another one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was the third. Another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I believe this is the
Wait lang,
last.
ma'am. Nasa fourth ako in a while.
Mabilis pala yung second na.
Kami, nasa fourth ako. Ma'am, we have almost 170 participants. So, okay, I'm on the last po.
Okay, so for the last batch, okay, give us your smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while you are smiling, it is a way for us to extend that smile in gratitude for our resource speaker, now Miss Kristine Dela Cruz. And we would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Miss Kristine Dela Cruz for sharing her invaluable knowledge and expertise as a resource speaker for the 26th e-knowledge entitled Policy Review and Analysis on the New Normal. So thank you very much. It's given by, of course, our founder, Miss Neddy Estrella of HR Calabarzon Group. So Miss Kristine, thank you very much for this afternoon. And at this point, we would like to say thank you, of course, to all of you who have joined us this afternoon. Please patiently wait for your e-certificates. If you did pay 50 pesos for 4 consecutive webinars, please be patient with us. Your certificate will be emailed to you on Saturday. Okay, so give us around 7 working days, and that will be around Saturday. So please wait for that in your email. Also, of course, we would like to invite you for the next Saturday's webinar. It will be, of course, posted as an invitation. So this whole month of May is all about labor. So all our topics are all connected to labor. So Miss Janet, Miss Rose, any other reminders that we would like to tell our attendees while they're with us?
Don't forget to fill up the attendance form and send their proof of payment to their email.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. The Google Docs, the link is now there in the chat. So while you're still here in the webinar, please make sure that you fill up your attendance. Check the link. Okay, go to that link so that we could verify your attendance and be able to send you your e-certificate. If you do request for your e-certificates, of course, that will be where you're going to give us the details that we are asking for: your name, your proof of payment, and all the other details. Please make sure that it's all filled up accurately, so we wouldn't have to baptize you with a different name, no? para po accurate ang pangalan na nailalagay namin sa e-certificate ninyo. So once again, thank you very much, dear HR Calabarzon people. Thank you very, very much. We'd like to say thank you for this afternoon. Miss Kristine, thank you very much once again. Miss Janet, Miss Rose, in behalf of Miss Neddy Estrella, our founder for HR Calabarzon, we thank you very much. And please stay safe. Please stay well. God bless.
Thank you. God bless everyone. Bye-bye. Happy weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. See you next week.
Good afternoon po. Ngayon na tayo mag-meeting, mga moms. Sige, go.